All right. So we'll start as usual with our good friend Cecilia from Attendance Works, who's got some introductory material for us, actually a very great piece and contribution. So thank you, Cecilia, and I hand it over to you.
Thanks, Samira, and hi, everyone. Good to see you. So I'll keep it short today. I'm sharing my screen. We created a new chronic absence letter based on what we were hearing from folks, some of it at Riverside SARB about the need for maybe a simplified chronic absence letter that people felt comfortable putting out. So we asked some close colleagues, including Amir, and also Professor Todd Rogers at Harvard University to review our attempt. And so we have this new chronic absence letter. The link is at the bottom there, and Leslie will send you the PDF of this slide after I'm done. Oh, I should put this in presentation so the words are bigger for you. Essentially, what's different about this letter compared to the ones that are currently in use, this adheres to some of the principles that Todd Rogers, who's the behavioral scientist who's done so much helping us with writing better attendance communications. It has some changes, right? First, you'll notice it's just got a lot fewer words, which makes it more likely that people will read it. It's written at a 5th grade reading level. You'll laugh knowing that my first attempt still ended up somewhere around a 9th grade level, and we took it down even farther so that families who may not be reading at a higher level will be able to absorb the content. And we formatted it, and you'll see the bullet points and lots of space to make it skimmable. And then in terms of content, what we did is we really wanted to help make the connection between absences and achievement. So this doesn't sound like a big compliance thing that we're sending to parents. And we're offering empathy and support, which is so important at this time, right? No one wants to be scolded, especially about things that are beyond their control. And everyone, I think, could use some help in getting their kids to school. So if you read the letter, it says, "Dear parent, guardian, Mrs. Leong, Cecilia has missed X number of days of school, and I'm concerned she's missing out on critical classroom time and learning. So here's the empathy. I know it's a hard time, and some absences may be due to illness or other challenges like COVID-19 quarantine." And it tells the parent why attendance matters and has an impact on, I didn't put Hetty's name out. It's me, actually, my education. And here's the example. And then it says very simply, "How can we help? Please call me at a fake phone number. I'd like to partner with you to improve Cecilia's attendance so we can keep her engaged in learning. Sincerely, the principal." So short and sweet. I just wanted to share it with you. Please feel free to take the template, and if you think it's useful, adapt it for your district and for your schools. And I hope that this is helpful and more engaging of parents. So that's it from today for the content, but I think this is a piece that hopefully is timely and helpful to you.
Boy, that is fantastic, Cecilia. Thank you. I really love that letter. Like you said, concise, to the point, and I really like the language. Is very accessible, as you said, and thank you for sharing that. That's a great template because it could be easily modified. You can put the truancy for a 2605 language in a box on the bottom, like the letter that that Attendance Works and Todd Rogers put together before, or you can change some of the words and turn it into a meeting invitation letter, or it can become a third letter.
You don't even have to put the truancy language there because it's a chronic absence letter.
I see.
Yeah, it's not a truancy letter.
Got
it. For the improved notices of truancy, Dr. Rogers did do that and offer the templates to
Right.
CDE. So you have those already, but this is for chronic absenteeism.
Got it. How cool. Thank you. That's a big contribution. And like everything else, I imagine all your other templates, folks can just download and use as their own.
Yeah, this one is, you can download it. It's in a Word doc so that you can edit. No need to call me. You can go right ahead and do it yourself.
Sweet. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Awesome. So next, I'm really, really excited about today's presentation. It's always nice to feature some of our wonderful talent here in Riverside County. And our friends at Riverside Unified School District have been doing fantastic work and putting attendance on the front burner for years. And we have our director, Mr. Raul Ayala, who I've had the pleasure of working with for years. He has been busily architecting with his team a wonderful growth and improvement at the district level and at the site level in their practices. And we also have my good friend and mentor, Jennifer Gomez Trejo from Student Support Services and Solutions, or S4. And I've had the pleasure of working with Jennifer for many years and have learned so much from you, Jennifer, and have seen some of the outstanding work that you and S4 have done in districts throughout California. And RUSD and S4 have collaborated together to make some really awesome designs in their program. And so we're really proud to present our very own Riverside Unified today. Thank you all so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Amir. I appreciate that. As Amir stated, Raul Ayala, I serve as the Director of People Services for Riverside Unified. And joining me this morning, who will be co-presenting with me, is really a gift to me, a partner, and Jennifer Gomez Trejo. And I'll extend that also as well to Amir, because like many of you, we've are challenged with re-engaging kids, especially given our given circumstance. So with that said, we prepared kind of a slideshow. I'm going to highlight some of the work that we've been doing. Jennifer and I will tag team this, so I'll do part of it, and then she'll talk to you through some of the slides. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Jennifer. I'm not. She's driving. So just a little bit about us as a district. I wasn't sure who was going to be on the call. So we are situated in the county of Riverside, and we're the 16th largest district, and we have close to 41,000 students enrolled in our district this school year. And we also have 57 schools in our district. That includes our early childhood programs, our virtual schools that we've started. And so quite a number of schools for us. As far as our demographic is concerned and who we serve, you'll see that here on the on the slide itself. And sorry, I have to apologize. I do have some remnants still of a cough. So if I get into a coughing spell, just bear with me, please. I'm trying to hydrate and trying to keep that at bay, but it just comes up the more I talk, it seems. So we'll plow through this. So again, that's our demographic. We're largely Hispanic representation as far as our demographic is concerned, and you see the breakdown there for some of our other subgroups that we serve. So next slide, please. So like many of you, this is my third year as a Director of Pupil Services. I've spent my entire career in Riverside Unified. It's been 2 decades plus, serving as an elementary principal, as an AP, elementary teacher, and then my latest stint is as a Director of Pupil Services. I like to tell people that I'm really a recovering middle school principal, because that's where I spent my last 7 years. And so when I got into the seat, attendance obviously is one of the things that that's under our purview here in Pupil Services, and really saw the need for us to emphasize or to put a district plan in place to improve positive attendance. And so some of the things that the context that I want to provide to you is here on the slide is that we were dealing with a declining enrollment. We are a district of choice, so that's one of the ways in which we try to let kids into our system to improve our declining enrollment. As I work with school sites, there was a need for consistent attendance systems across our district. We're a big district. We have a lot of new employees coming on. And so we wanted to establish that coherence and that those procedures were systematized across the system, but that also that we would have our sites to begin to look ahead and to plan ahead for the upcoming school and the return of students. I mentioned the significant amount not only of classified staff, but we had a huge turnover in administrators as well. We were one of the few districts that offered an incentive for early retirement that last school year, and we had quite a number of our staff take us up on that, and so that brought an influx of new people. So again, needing to build this coherence. We are all, like many of you, dealing with the impacts of distance learning, the exclusion of kids because of COVID testing. And ultimately, we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to re-engage students back in, to the in-person learning. And as many of you know, my goal is to always look at chronic absenteeism and then look to how do we decrease that. By the way, like many of you, we had the sit out happen on Monday. As we look at our attendance and our impacts for that day, we were down an additional 5.5% of students not attending. I mean, our ADA right now for that particular day, we were at 88.1%, and we're usually in the low 90s, mid 90s. And so that had quite a bit of an impact on us as well. Next slide, please. So as we laid out the context of our work in the previous slide and what the need that we saw to bring in a system to really help our sites, I started to look at who our partner was going to be from a district perspective, who was going to be leading this work. From a school site perspective, I needed to figure out who are going to be my key players there that I would need to reach out to. And so if you look at the slide from a district perspective, we knew that we were going to lead the work as people services. We knew that communications was going to be a big component to this because some of this is going to involve changes that are going to hit the school site. So we do have a communications manager in our district that I work with to be able to cascade some of these messages to not only our community, but to our school sites. And then we were going to leverage also in trying to get out to our community, our Family Resource Center, and then any of those programs or family engagement partners that we have to also join in this work about the importance of developing showing up and going to school culture. From a school site perspective, we needed to get a commitment from our site administrators. And then what would ultimately constitute a site attendance team. So we have classified people that are part of that are key, and our attendance clerks, and also some of our other outreach staff that would be part of these teams, like teachers, other classified instructional aides, our campus supervisors. What we learned during our distance learning and the re-engagement, the operationalization of our re-engagement strategies is the importance of home visits, those porch visits. And we saw a direct increase or an improvement on attendance by doing those visits. But the other big thing that we needed to leverage was scheduling and closing conferences for students, those SARTs that happen at the school sites. And so we know that we needed to train and get a lot of these people on site because we had a number of students that were out, and it wouldn't be feasible for one person to do it. So we're talking about this development of a site attendance team. And so we'll highlight for you how we did that. What was key in this regard as well is that we got in front of the principals. So I always needed to front load our principals. So I actually invited Amir to come to our principals because in our partners down there, we're looking at the County Office of Education to help us and to work with our site so that we're meeting on a regular basis. And it's through what Amir has set up, and there is a site support partnership. And then we also have our other partner that we work with that handles all our truancy letters, is that school SI&A. So it's our A2A campaign that falls under that, which many of you may be familiar with. So we brought them on board as well, because I appreciate the letter that attendance work shared with us, because by the way, we're using some of their messaging as well that's being pushed out through our communications, but we use those letters to kind of tailor them and give them a good language so that we want to build this partnership with our parents. And so we've done that with our A2A campaign as well. Next slide, please. Now, in partnering with in addition to that, I have great respect for the work that S4 does because we use them for other things that they come and support us with as it pertains to discipline. But I had seen Jennifer come to a county office, and I made a note that, this is somebody that definitely I want to partner with because I want to be able to develop the site attendance team. So I reached out to her and to assist us with an overall development of our attendance framework or our plan that we've developed for a district. And so that would constitute, obviously, that we would have to make sure that we're looking at our board policies and our ARs as it pertains to attendance, review all our attendance documents, related documents that we have. We needed to discuss the professional development for our district attendance team that began this work initially to develop this district framework. In addition to developing an attendance manual that we put into place. And a huge shout out actually for the attendance manual goes to another district within our county, it's San Jacinto. So reached out to them and really looked at some of the work that they were doing because we wanted to provide that document or some coherence to our sites with all the new influx of people. So that really talked to them about, how to code attendance, some research on attendance, how to hold SARTs, how to, we even provided a script for them for how to, what to say on a SART so that they could, again, build those connections and try to get kids re-engaged. And then our attendance team, along with the partnership of S4, is that we started to develop and we worked last spring into the fall and through the summer to develop this district attendance action plan. And then what that will ultimately lead to now, and that we're ready to gear up on, is the development of our school site action plan. So we've got sites that are identified that we're going to be working with specifically to operationalize some of these components of our attendance plan so that we have a positive impact on that positive attendance. So we're super excited about that. We've got the commitment of sites to be able to do that. And they've identified who else is going to serve on their team. So there'll be a shared leadership in that regard, and there'll be some capacity building that needs to occur from our end, and that's what we intend to meet with them on a regular basis to provide them the support that they need so that they put this plan into place. Next slide, please. So as we look with with partnering with S4, we looked at some of the goals that we knew we needed to accomplish as part of our plan. One, we developed our district framework. We need to now focus on the how do we operationalize this or make this come to the how of how this happens at a school site, how teams will do this attendance work, and then we will meet regularly with them, as I previously mentioned, to build their capacity, to identify resources that they may use to be able to promote this ongoing culture of showing up and getting kids to school. So that was key. Next slide, please. So just our roadmap of kind of where we started and where we're going with this. I know it might be a little bit hard to see because of the dialogue box there, but back in the winter of 2021 was this development of the site attendance manual that we put into place, and then we shared with all our site admin and all the key people that touch attendance at the school site so that they would have that resource and that helps build that coherence as the first layer. Then we started to look into spring of 2021 into the professional development and working with S4 with our site district attendance team. So I brought in assistant principals from the different levels to be able to work on this plan and to develop this plan with us. During the summer, we further developed and refined our district attendance action plan, and we had it at a place now where we're ready to go. During this fall is that we're now looking at our site teams and our pilot schools that are going to begin to put this plan into place with our support. And then through the winter and through the spring, we'll have follow-up meetings that we will meet specifically with the different levels. We'll meet with elementary, middle school, and high school. That's kind of just the way we've set it up. They have different needs, and we want to be able to dedicate some time to them to build their capacity so that, again, they're putting this plan into place. And so that's kind of the context of where we started and kind of our roadmap of where we are. I'd like to turn this over now to Jennifer Gomez Trejo, who will kind of go through a little bit more with you as to what the plan may entails. So Jennifer.
Thank you, Raul. I appreciate that. I think it's really important to take a step back and look at this roadmap, though, in terms of where Raul wanted to go with this, and really being intentional about setting a time frame for this work and the steps that needed to be taken in order to achieve this. You know, when we talk about attendance and we get really excited about working on this, you know, we want to go full steam ahead and we want to do everything yesterday. But a lot of this takes planning and it takes intention. And I really appreciate the fact that he went into it with this idea of this is something that we're going to be working on over a period of time to make sure that we're really getting buy-in from staff, that we're collaborating with our partners, we're bringing something together to the table so that as we implement, you know, we have all of those pieces in place. This isn't like a top-down type thing from the district. This is, you know, we're putting a plan together. This is what you're going to do. It really was done with representatives from the site, with community members, with resources from the county to be able to say, this is something that we're all working on together and that we're invested in. So it is going to take a little bit of time to put this together. But as Raul said, really with the goal of kind of operationalizing this and building capacity for the future, you know, especially in a district where there was a lot of new classified staff, a lot of new administrators. I think it was really important to be intentional about how this was set up and really working through the steps of the process to make sure that it could be implemented well. So I'm going to go over a few things related to the training and professional development for the district attendance team. And Raul mentioned, you know, some of the players that were already on the team and how he was really thoughtful about who he invited to be a part of this. It wasn't just going to be people services. It wasn't going to be Raul and his team that were going to do all of this work. He needed to bring in other partners that were going to help build this and really message it across the district. And then beyond that, to community partners who could help get the word out a little bit beyond that. So in terms of professional development, when we're talking about the district attendance team, it was all of these people. They were all invited to the table to be a part of these meetings. And what we decided early on is that we wanted to have a series of meetings. We didn't just want to do, you know, a training here, a training there. We were going to calendar and establish these trainings to get as many people on the district attendance team to participate as much as possible to build toward the development of this plan. So there were some key questions that we kind of started with that Raul and I had some conversations about, and we wanted to make sure we're part of how we developed this professional development for people. So some of the things that we wanted to make sure we hit on and we got some input from the district attendance team were related to what's working. You know, what's working within the Riverside Unified School District as it related to attendance. Let's not throw out everything. Let's not start from scratch. Let's get input from people about what's working well and how we can continue to have that be a part of what we do going forward. And also, where can improvements be made? Site administrators, office staff, district staff all had ideas of, you know, where could we make improvements? And we wanted to make sure that we valued that as part of this process. We also wanted to make sure that we built in some time to look at the data and identify what the data would tell us about our student populations and trends that we were seeing across the district. So that's where it was important to make sure that we were including data and information from various sources, including attention to attendance, who's had a longstanding relationship with the district. Who needs to be added to the team to make implementation more effective. So even though there was this district attendance team that incorporated a lot of different people, and we were regularly meeting with about 20 people during these meetings, we wanted to see who else needed to be added. Because as we started discussing what do we want to do with these different tiers, people said, oh, I think this person should be involved, or let's invite this person from the community. Let's invite this person from the elected officials office. Let's invite this community-based organization. And so we wanted to make sure that we were really inclusive of those voices and got as many people on board as we could, because this was going to be a community effort. And then also another question we focused on is how can we make this action plan achievable and not overwhelming? Sometimes when you talk about the development of a district attendance plan, the idea of that sounds really good. And then when you start going through the process, people get very overwhelmed because they're not sure how to include all the different components and what does this look like? And is this something we can actually do? You know, plans are great, but if they're not achievable and they're not something that are accessible to people, then they're not going to implement. So we had we had to kind of have some initial conversations about how we were putting this plan together and how we were going to be using the plan. And we wanted to make sure we had that buy-in and input with people from the very beginning. So we're going to break down a little bit. As I mentioned, we had a series of 4 trainings. They were calendared. Raul made sure that the information went out to people. They were aware of the meeting times. We tried to work as best as we could around people's schedules. And I'm really happy to say we had high levels of engagement and participation. Amir attended, lots of people from the district, the school sites. We had representation from the various levels, so elementary, middle, and high school. We also had representation from alternative education, which I think is important. Sometimes those voices are not always heard, and so it was important that everyone was at the table. At the initial meeting, we kind of talked about the purpose of an attendance action plan and why it was something that we wanted to develop with input from all staff. We shared some initial data that talked about overall and subgroup information related to chronic absenteeism. We also addressed different sources of data and how data was currently being analyzed. We also mentioned, who else should be involved in these meetings and these topics. And this is where, during the course of this conversation, there was this, this reinforcement of the idea of adopting a school within the district. And there was a goal by the district office to make sure that there were community partners, people who would help reach out and support, and essentially, were already adopting a school within the district. And if we could get each school adopted with some kind of a focus on attendance, that would be really helpful in terms of messaging out to the community, messaging out to parents, and really building momentum around this. When we look at that first meeting, we realized we needed some additional data to look at. We had some general data, but this is where we really worked with partners at A2A to prepare for the next meeting and drill down on some of that data and share additional information. We made sure invitations went out to some of those additional partners to include them in the next meeting, and we're pretty successful in getting them to show up. So at that point, the district attendance team grew a little bit more. The next meeting, we did that additional attendance review, which was really critical, breaking down and looking at things like grade levels, looking at ethnicities, looking at chronic absence data over time, historically. That was influential in helping us to identify who some of the priority populations were going to be that were going to be included as part of the plan. During the second meeting, we also reviewed MTSS and addressed the key components of Tier 1. So we talked about, this is where I think school input was really helpful because they were able to share what they were already doing. So how were they able to include that messaging? How were they able to set expectations? What were they doing for parent and community engagement? All of those components we were able to hear directly from the school sites, and brainstorming, putting things together on Google Forms and sharing that information helped us kind of move forward. We also wanted to look at aligning those activities in Tier 1 to the district calendar. So in thinking about, back to school nights and parent conferences as opportunities for messaging to parents, we needed to make sure that that was built into the plan. For recognition, thinking about when did the quarters end, or the semesters end, or the trimesters end. We wanted to include that as part of what we did too. And then how could the district help support sites and message to larger audiences? So what role could district office and in particular communications really do to help promote at that Tier 1 level? So we started brainstorming this and brainstorming it through monthly activities. So in all of these sessions, we built in time for people to work together. We had breakout sessions. People were working with a partner in small groups, putting things together. We were all sharing information through Google Forms. The next one we did was on Cinco de Mayo. We celebrated in a very different way, focusing on attendance. Again, bringing in some new partners. We did a quick review of Tier 1 and then began to focus on Tier 2, early identification and intervention. So we heavily focused on the idea of engagement because, as Raul said, we were nearing the end of the school year. This was a very challenging time for a lot of people, right? Just trying to think about how are we finishing one year and preparing for another year where more of our students will be coming back. How are we focusing on that relationship building and outreach support? And how could those activities be included within that monthly calendar as well? So brainstorming that, sharing best practices out from the school sites. And I think that was really powerful because even within a school district, people get so caught up in just what's happening at their own individual school site. They don't necessarily know what's happening with their partners at other schools or other grade levels. So we wanted to make sure that they had an opportunity to share out, and people were able to just take best practices from those meetings and immediately start implementing them. And it was great to see this collaboration. Oh, I didn't know you were doing this. Tell me a little bit more about this, and being able to include that as well. And then our final meeting was May 19th. The focus of this one was really on tier 3. So what do we do at that piece with the really intensive interventions? What does the district have available? What does the SARB process look like at the district? What's working with SARB? What needs to be tweaked a little bit? And having some time to kind of brainstorm from a district perspective, a site perspective, and a community perspective, what more could be done at the tier 3 level to really support this work around attendance. So those 4 sessions were very helpful in developing kind of this cohort, this district attendance team, getting people to work together, having those deeper conversations about what was going to happen going forward and what were the pieces that needed to be in place to put this all together. So then it became time, once those initial professional developments and trainings happened, then it became time to, okay, so now that we have this information, this input, we have a team that's in place. We've looked at data from a variety of different sources. I just put some examples of things that we pulled from A2A. It was a lot more than this, but just a few examples. So we have a team, we're looking at data. We have had all this amazing input over the course of those 4 meetings. So now what? Because the development of the plan, as I mentioned, what's the next step? How do we put it together? District staff is very busy in everything that they're doing. Site staff is incredibly busy in what they're doing. So this is kind of where I was able to help step in and kind of integrate all of the information and organize it in a way that made it a little bit easier to address, and included some important components. So I kind of want to go over those because I think it's important for anyone who's looking at creating an attendance action plan to think about what are the different components of that. So when we developed the actual kind of template that we used for it, we wanted to make sure that we took these things into consideration. So we started with district calendar. So what did we already know about the district calendar? What things were already in place? When did school begin? When were those different breaks during the year? When were back to school nights? When were parent conferences? How are we looking at that to make sure that we were mindful of the district calendar and how that plays a role in attendance? We also needed to make sure that we were aware of the district priorities and budgets around attendance. So this, looking at LCAP, going back into LCAP and what were those goals going to be? So for the Riverside Unified School District, it's to decrease chronic absenteeism by 0.5% for this next year. So that was very clearly spelled out. Within LCAP, there were some actions attached to that: positive school climate, professional development, looking at data, creating systems and community partnerships. So LCAP kind of laid out for the district what was intended in terms of attendance, and that helped guide our work as well. We wanted to make sure that after having discussions around all of those tiers during our professional development, that those activities were included and that input was included in the plan. We needed to make sure that our priority populations were being addressed through the actions and activities that were taking place during the course of the year. So it was important to include that. Tools and materials, and this is more from a planning perspective and for Raul, who would ultimately be responsible for kind of implementing it. We also want to do some planning around, okay, if we say we're going to do this activity or action, what tools or materials do we need to already have in place to be able to support that? So for example, during parent-teacher conferences, if we wanted teachers to share out handouts related to attendance that were created by Attendance Works, then we needed to make sure, Raul needed to make sure that everybody had those in their hands in time for the parent conferences. So that would be an example of identifying what tools do we have or what tools do we need to create prior to the time that we're looking at implementation. We wanted to look at staff roles. So who was going to be responsible for various pieces of this, whether it was at the district level or at the site level. And then who are also the community and agency partners who could support with the different activities that we were implementing, whether it was at tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. So we wanted to make sure that we had that voice in there as well. And then ultimately throughout the plan, we needed to make sure that stakeholder groups were a part of this conversation as well. So that our activities were directed towards staff, towards students, towards family, towards community members, and that was embedded in the plan. So when you think of it from this and what I've just explained and what I've kind of shared, you know, this can be a little daunting when you're talking about all of these different components and how do you put this together and what does it look like and how can we make this work individually for this school district, for Riverside. It has to be reflective of what Riverside is doing, what they have in place, and what we talked about during that professional development. So I'm going to switch over to a different screen. Okay, can you all see this one now? A little different. I kind of see people leaning in, so it's probably a little small.
Yeah, can you make it bigger, please, Jennifer?
Does that help? Is that a little bit bigger? Okay. So in terms of, it's kind of something that we put together. I wanted to include kind of a summer component in here too, because we know that a lot of work gets done over the summer in preparation for the year. We don't just start on day one. So what we laid out in looking at this is kind of laid out by the time frame, some of the activities and descriptions of things that were going to happen, who the partners were, what tools or materials might be needed, and also budget considerations, because realistically, some of these activities are going to have a price tag attached to it. And so Raul needed to do some planning around that and make sure that it was being supported at that level. So when you look at some of the summer activities, tier 1 heavily invested in these kinds of pieces, preparation work, getting ready for the next year, looking at data, sharing goals with stakeholder groups, coordinating training, reviewing board policies, attendance forms, and protocols, which we assisted with, scheduling various meetings that would take place during the course of the year, looking at school and district websites, looking at tools that were already in place and what tools might need to be developed to support the work throughout the year, working with community partners, Chamber of Commerce to adopt a school, sharing materials for the attendance campaign. And so I know Riverside used the rebound with attendance through attendance work, so having access to those materials. And then again, calendaring dates for parent meetings, which Amir has been really instrumental in kind of reaching out and making himself available to work with school sites to address parents and hold those meetings and talk with them about attendance. At the tier 2 level, it was really looking at lists of chronic absentees from the previous year, conducting outreach, doing those porch or home visits during the summer, and creating individualized attendance plans, identifying additional community partners. And then at the tier 3 level, kind of scheduling meetings for next year for SARB, reviewing forms, looking at membership and preparing for that. So that was kind of just the preparation work. Going into each of the next months, and we just kind of developed this month by month. So for the month of August, we looked at the calendar events. When does school begin? When do classes begin? When is back to school night? Looking at historical attendance trends. What did we see in terms of trends? And then identifying tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 activities that would be carried out at the appropriate time. So welcome back messages, attendance tip sheets to staff, kind of modeling conversations around attendance at various meetings, best practices for SART meetings, identifying no-shows, all of those kinds of things. And then going into tier 2 and tier 3, really kind of just starting out at the beginning of the school year and implementing those practices as early as possible to support that work. And then just going through month by month. So we really looked at those events. We looked at the different tiers, the activities, the partners, the tools. So if we go back to the slide that I had showed you before, let me stop sharing this one and go back to, okay. So if we go back to this, it takes all of these different components into account, right? We have the calendar pieces, the district priorities and budget, MTSS. We identified through some of the activities, the priority populations, the tools we would need, staff roles, and we made sure that our stakeholder groups were represented throughout the plan. So that's how we kind of spent some time working over the summer, and I was able to kind of synthesize all of that information and help put the plan together for the district, and then worked with Raul and his team to review it and make sure that it was reflective of the conversations that we had during professional development and reflected, the goals and needs of the district, and that this was something that the district was comfortable with, because ultimately it would begin that implementation. So we had those meetings. We met again with the team in July to go through it with them, shared it with them, asked if they had any questions or concerns. We wanted to make sure we addressed everything as much as possible at that time to prepare for the year. And then we were good to go. So I'll turn it back over to Raul so that he can talk a little bit about what we're doing this school year and kind of building on that.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, so now that we have our plan in place, it's time for it to become a living, breathing document, operationalized, and sites carrying out some of these components. And that's going to be key for us, our site teams. What we've done for them is not only will we meet with them on an ongoing basis, on a monthly basis, support their work, but I'm also, as a district, we're using our ELO, our expanded learning opportunity grant, to be able to dedicate some monies particular to this plan. So as you know, the deadline for those monies has been extended, so we're looking at a 2-year period. And so as an example for visits or porch visits is that we want site teams to be able to go out and do those visits, not necessarily when it's convenient for us during their workday, but really after hours and on weekends when we can catch the parents there. And so being able to provide them and to pay them for that additional time to be able to carry out this work is a great use of an expanded learning opportunity grant for us to tackle on this issue of engaging or kids not re-engaging with their education in person. And so those are our steps for this year. Again, operationalizing our site teams, giving them the support that they need, and additional meetings that we'll set up for this year for them to put their plan into place. Next slide, please. And so we're starting with these schools that are here and really focusing in on them as our pilot schools for this plan. A lot of these schools already have an attendance goal as part of their SIPSA or their single plan for student achievement. And we are going to be honed in on them to be able to provide them that support that they need and that PD so that they can have that, feel confident in their attendance team and some of the activities that they'll carry out. And they have a month-to-month roadmap. We're not expecting them to do every single thing on those maps, but we want high leverage things that ultimately will increase or improve our attendance rates at our school sites. So next slide, please. So as I shared, this is our plan for as we meet with them and the work that's yet to come. This they'll be focused on this upcoming school year, and we have our plan as a guide. They'll be guided through the process in developing their own plan at the school site and giving them that flexibility, because they do some things already that are geared to improve attendance. But we really want to look at the metric. Are they giving you the return that you're looking for? Is it improving our attendance? And so just reflecting on some of the different programs, the staffing, the support that they would need, and then keeping in mind that it has to be age appropriate, right? So what would motivate kids to come? So we have an incentive piece as well to this. And again, we're using some of our expanded learning opportunity grant to be able to give sites some flexibility with some dollars to be able to say, if you improve your attendance, here's what some money for you to be able to do that. What we also did is talk to our business office, and I wanted business office that has agreed that if schools improve their attendance during reporting periods, that some of that improvement percentage of ADA that we are getting, that they are funneling that directly to the school sites, because I want to make sure that sites make a connection between their efforts and the outcomes that they're getting, and we want to reinforce that. And I think that sites it'll be a motivator for sites, and they can turn around and use those monies to further implement things that are in our attendance plan. We want to certainly expand, and we talked about adopt a school. That was a charge in our district that we wanted every community, every business within our boundaries to adopt a school. Many schools already have that, but we need to kind of get in there and then help them understand what our plan is, and then how they can better support a plan that is geared for specifically for attendance, and what things that they can do to help us. And as we mentioned previously, we have follow-up meetings that are going to be scheduled to address any of their questions, their ongoing concerns, and for us to even problem solve any of the challenges that they may be facing. So this will be a combined team effort with supports directly from us, as our division is here to support schools that support kids. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that for them. Next slide, please. So with that, I think that gives you an overview of the work that we've done. I'm thankful I didn't do this alone. Obviously, you saw the partners that I enlisted to be able to do this, and making sure that I brought in those represented from the different school sites and the different levels and the different voices that we would need to undertake this work. So I'm just really blessed to be at a place where we've made this happen. We've kind of orchestrated this, and now we're got to get into this work. And I'm excited because moving forward, this will become a living, breathing document for us. So we'll revisit this on a yearly basis and see what are some things that we need to change, what do we add, and what are some things that are working, all driven by, obviously, we need to see an uptick in our data. And so really excited to get this work going.
And Amir, you've been a partner kind of from the beginning of this, and I don't know if there's any input you want to add based on your participation or what you've seen or what your hopes are for this.
Thank you, my friend. Absolutely. First of all, I mean, my hat's off to you all. Sometimes when we're thinking about our work, or, on those long commutes, we think to ourselves, wouldn't it be nice if, and a number of things follow, wouldn't it be nice if a district majorly overhauled and improved their system, created teams at school sites, brought in all of these community partners, but more importantly, partners from the school sites and from the different levels, so that this is a living, breathing collaboration, and rolled out some programs and systems that are such an evolution of what we've seen. And those are nice thoughts that we might think to ourselves, but you all are actually doing that. And this is a multi-year plan, and I absolutely can't wait. Hopefully, if you're available, you can come back next year and give us the round 2 of the implementation. But I can't thank you all enough. This is really, really important work, and you've done it thoroughly, and you're just getting warmed up. I sincerely hope that others will emulate this kind of activity and plan, and create these kind of teams. If we bring everybody on board, so to speak, and to help us, we're going to make a great difference. And Jennifer, would you and S4 be available if other districts want to create some sort of a similar or try to replicate the idea in their own way? Would you be available to support districts and partner with other districts to do this same work?
Yes, absolutely. We work with a number of districts in Riverside County already on various topics, not all of them attendance. Sometimes it's enrollment records, sometimes it's discipline or Section 504. We cover a lot of areas, but attendance is really my passion, and I've appreciated the chance to do this work with Raul and see the benefit of really taking some time and putting all these pieces together. As I mentioned, having a roadmap, starting with looking at policies, looking at procedures, looking at attendance forms, doing the professional development, establishing that team, and then putting a plan together in place and seeing it through with implementation. So if there are any other districts, or Sherry, I know you're from up north, if there's other districts in your area up there who are interested in using a model like this, I would be happy to speak with people and see what we could do with your district or a consortium of districts, if you'd like to do that in cooperation with someone else. But again, really appreciate the opportunity to work with Raul, and also for Amir giving us the opportunity to present today. I think it really is a model that could be replicated in other places, and would be really happy to talk to anyone else who's interested in implementing something like this. This last slide is our contact information. So Raul's information is there, and my information, phone number, and emails and everything on here. So please feel free to reach out if you have questions or are interested in exploring this a little bit further.
This was really fantastic. Thanks, Jennifer and Raul, for sharing this. Yes, Jennifer, as you said, being north in a rural county, I'm sort of a team of one and have been trying to put this roadmap together. So I would love to explore how you could come in and support us as a county. But just thanks to both of you. This is fantastic. Love seeing what other people are doing.
Yes, it was very nice to see this work. And I actually have a meeting with my team tomorrow to see if this is something that we can start at our site as well. But I have a question, because a lot of times I see a lot of districts using A2A. And could this be done without having A2A, or is that something that is critical in including in the plan?
This could be done with information coming out of any student information system or any program. It doesn't necessarily need to be A2A. When I was brought on board last spring, A2A was already a partner with the district. And so having worked with them in the past, I kind of knew what reports to ask for or what information they had available. But it could also be pulled up from, Aries, Power School, Infinite Campus, Synergy, whoever it is that you use. We can work with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. We're in our third year with the A2A, and then prior to that, we were handling a lot of this in-house, even our truancy letters with our own programmers and that. And so as long as you have the data, right, you have a clean, well, I think what's key is clean and accurate data that you would have, and you have systems in place to be able that, the people that are inputting that, obviously, and that you're getting that. So absolutely, I would agree with Jennifer that it could be done without, with the student information system that you would have.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for our presenters, or just anything for the good of the cause?
Raul, I'm really curious, when you started the plan and you reviewed your policies and your manuals and your systems, what did you find was helpful and that you needed to keep? And where were some of the points where you needed to make some changes? If you could give a couple of examples.
Yeah, so in our district, the way we're structured, when we talk about attendance, when you distill it and boil it down, it really becomes at the secondary levels, we have assistant principals of attendance, and their whole focus is attendance, and they might work with an attendance clerk or an attendance person, right? So it's a small team of two. And that's not all they do, right? And so what we found as a system, and even when you drill down to the elementary level, we didn't have assistant principals at every school site. So it'd be left to a classified person, and we're encouraging them, you got to schedule your SARTs, you got to schedule and close your SARTs. And so they had a really hard time doing that. So in our work, we talked about the development of building the capacity of other people, because the SART doesn't have to be held by a designee or an assistant principal, that we could expand that with some specific training and have other people that are at the site that are passionate, even a teacher that's passionate about attendance, take on some of that work. So one of the things that we found across our system is that they were not being scheduled and closed as it pertains to SARTs, and that was the major hiccup. And so we said, so how do we do that? How do we expand the number of people that have the ability to be able to do this? Because we were overwhelmed, certainly during distance learning and certainly at the beginning of this year. And so we found that was the challenge. The other thing that we came across that was been a challenge for the last 2 years is just our ongoing change and addition of attendance coach to deal with some of the new legislation that came on board. And so we had to develop different codes for distance learning to keep track of kids for the different expectations. We've had to do that again this year for independent study, short-term independent study for COVID-related absences and the introduction of different codes that we're using. And so having site teams and having an avenue where we meet with them regularly is paramount to our district. Our tech services and a lot of people that we use Aries in our district. And so we found out that there wasn't necessarily a point person that would meet regularly with people that handled the attendance for the data entry component. And so we had tons of irregularities there. And so now bringing them on board and meeting with them on a regular basis is really going to, empower them so that one, they understand why we're doing the things that we're doing. And then more importantly, how to do those things effectively, and then who they can reach out for additional support. And so it's funny when you talk to people, I mean, I tell them, attendance is our bread and butter, but yeah, sometimes we don't necessarily put our emphasis or the work that we need to, as we, we get wrapped up dealing with, and by good word, we should lead with instruction. I'm not gonna argue that, but when we look at the scope of a work of some of our admin on site, they might only have, this little bit to deal with and to dedicate to attendance. And I need them to dedicate that much more. So how do we do that and balance their workload to be able to do that? So a lot of it had to do with, again, the organization of people and getting that attendance team in place to be able to share in some of this, what might be perceived as a ginormous plan that we want to put in place. And it's doable and achievable so long as we get the commitment of the people and we train them and we show them how to go about their work.
Fantastic work. Thank you for sharing, both of you.
That last phrase is a quote right there, Raul. It's doable and achievable. If we bring people together and train them, that's just, boy, what a major undertaking, what an ambitious plan. It's such a pleasure to see you all unload this model, and hopefully it will inspire others to follow suit. I'm so glad we have this one on videotape, and that it'll be available for people to see, because this is a fantastic presentation and another one for the vaults. So you all really made our day, and thanks so much for this fantastic presentation.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I'd like to, publicly thank our partners. Amir, you're included in this because you've been a good friend to me. And so we've undertaken this and love the commitment, and certainly Jennifer Gomez-Trejo and her expertise. Attendance is her wheelhouse. So I would encourage any district out there who's looking to partner with someone that you really take a hard look at Jennifer and S4, because they've done a fantastic job for us and being able to facilitate. It kind of goes back to that, I could talk to my people about attendance all the time and probably say the same things that Jennifer say, but they're not received as well, all right? And so then you bring an outside person and they say this thing, they're, oh yeah, we need to be doing this. And so part of that, I think we all sometimes deal with that. And so enlisting the help of others that come, that have that expertise, that are, that can kind of share that message and carry that message for you as well, has allowed it to gain traction in our district. And so that was a good approach from our behalf.
Awesome. Well, all right, my friends, thank you all for your time. And thanks again to our presenters. And thank you, Cecilia. I look forward to seeing you all next time. And I hope you have a great day.